Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Traveling Therapist. The video that we're going to focus on today is dementia, and I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain what are the different stages of dementia and what are some of the commonly asked questions, especially by caregivers and loved ones, family members, and even patients themselves. The first thing that I want to talk about is the stages. So there's different scales that measure the stages of dementia. The one that I'm going to talk about right now is the Global Deterioration Scale, which is also called the Reisberg Scale, and it measures dementia in 7 stages. Now, the first 2 stages of the Reisberg Scale basically states that there is no diagnosis of dementia. You will see in stage 1, everything is pretty normal. You wouldn't really consider the person to have memory loss. Stage 2, there's a slow progression. There's a very mild cognitive decline where you start to notice maybe the person's a little bit forgetful about names, where they left their keys, maybe they forget an address, things like that. So that's stage 2. Usually the doctor will not measure the person has suffering from dementia at that stage yet. Stage 3, there is the increase in confusion, a little bit more difficulty in concentrating. There's more difficulty in work performance, say if a person is still working, or even work performance around the house. They also have a harder time finding the right words when they're talking to describe their feelings, describe situations. At this stage 3, the family member may start to notice a little bit more of a decline in memory. They might start to see a little bit more problems with critical thinking, with problem solving. In this particular scale, we're calling it stage 3, but you may also see researchers call this stage 1, because this is when you really start to pick up on the signs of cognitive decline. Stage 4 is early stage dementia, and in this stages the person will start to experience difficulty remembering recent events. They'll have a hard time managing their finances. For those of you who are caregivers and family members, something that is very important to realize about a person who's suffering from cognitive decline is they will start to have increased difficulty managing their finances. So paying bills, remembering how many times they've paid a bill, remembering when a bill is due. They also have a hard time figuring out bank account information, keeping track of their money. This is a very vulnerable stage because a lot of people get taken advantage of during this stage. There's a lot of fraud that happens during this stage. So this is a very important time in a person's life. Someone who has dementia, is a very important, very vulnerable time for them, where they need a lot of support from the family, a lot of vigilance. Something else that you might start noticing is the person will have a harder time when they're traveling alone to a new location. They'll get lost easily. They'll have trouble completing complex tasks. They start to enter this denial phase about their cognitive decline, about their dementia. They might start to withdraw from their family and friends because socializing is difficult because they can't always remember events that have happened. They can't keep track of conversations. So since they're entering that denial stage, they don't really want people to notice what's happening, because if people notice, then they have to face the truth, because questions start coming up, and so they'll start withdrawing. A stage 3, just because as a person ages, it should be a normal routine thing to have a visit at least once a year with a neurologist. So I think at stage 3, you should, like the moment you start noticing those little signs of forgetfulness, of confusion, of difficulty managing day-to-day tasks, you should be making an appointment for your loved one to have a neurologist visit, or you should be making an appointment for yourself to have a neurologist visit. And then definitely stage 4, you should be looking for a neurologist. Now we move on to stage 5. At this point, there's major deficiencies with memories. There's now need for assistance to complete daily tasks that include dressing, bathing, preparing meals. Memory loss is constant, very prominent. You may notice like big chunks of time disappearing for the person, forgetting their phone number, their address, their birthday. Moving on to stage 6, we're talking about severe cognitive decline. Stage 5 going into stage 6 is major to severe cognitive decline. Then stage 6 is when people are required 24-hour assistance. At this point, there's incontinence. Usually the person's either becoming incontinent of urine or urine and bowel. The person is no longer able to bathe themselves, dress themselves. They start to forget how to speak. They start to forget how to walk. Their personality will start changing, so you're going to see maybe a little bit more aggression. They'll start to become a little bit more delusional. Like you see a lot of people concerned about who's managing their money, who's coming in contact with them. They might start to believe that family members are actually strangers that are coming to harm them. They might believe that they're, somebody's stealing from them, somebody's trying to hurt them. So delusions are normal during stage 6. You see incontinence is normal during stage 6. Falls become pretty prominent during stage 6 because the person starts to forget safety. Maybe they need to have a walker, maybe they need to have a wheelchair, and they forget that. It's very easy because they become very impulsive. And so they'll just jump up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and not realize that they need to have a wheelchair or they need to have a walker. They might become very OCD, very obsessive, cleaning, or hoarding. You see a lot of hoarding happen in this time, especially food. They will become very anxious, very agitated, have difficulty understanding change. Change at this stage is so overwhelming. Any form of change, you change the furniture in their apartment, you change the routine that they use for eating, for dressing, for bathing, new people that come into their lives, is so overwhelming for them. Anything that has to do with change can be really, really anxiety producing for them. Then you have the final stage, which is stage 7. And at this point, now we're seeing mostly someone who is bedbound. They require full assistance. They require assistance toileting. They require assistance bathing. At this point, you might start to see that they are no longer able to sit or stand on their own. This is also the stage that I think is the scariest for family members because internal shutdown begins to happen and the person is no longer eating or drinking. The brain is no longer communicating with the gut, no longer communicating with the rest of the body, and therefore things as simple as hunger or thirst are not really happening anymore. and the person just starts shutting down. This is definitely the scariest part. This is usually when hospice comes in, and the family member has to start making decisions on, like, are we going to try and force feed the person, or are we just going to let the disease progression happen? So with that said, those are the 7 stages of dementia. Next question might be, okay, so I'm seeing some of these signs. My loved one is starting to maybe forget how to set the oven, how to make it home. Maybe my loved one has had their electricity cut off because they couldn't remember to pay their bill, and that's now happened a couple of times. I'm worried about their safety. Maybe they've had a fall. And the question is, what does the family member do? What does the loved one do? And my personal history working with people that have loved ones with any form of dementia is, the earlier you start the change, the better. Because as the disease progresses, any sort of change is going to cause really, really significant distress. It doesn't mean that you may not have to do it, because maybe you realize later than you expected that the person is losing their cognitive abilities. But if you are able to catch it, the earlier the better. So the types of conversations that you might have to have are, does your loved one need increased assistance in the home? Maybe they now need a CNA to come to the home on a daily basis to make sure that they're okay, make sure that they're eating, make sure that they're bathing, make sure that the clothes that they're wearing are clean, that they're not eating food that's expired, that they are not hoarding. So maybe a conversation as early as possible, definitely a conversation about going to see a neurologist. That's big. So, get that out of the way, have them see the doctor, get some sort of an idea, have a brain scan done, get some sort of an idea, like what's going on. Find a support group. Alzheimer's Association, they're pretty much everywhere. You can get them on the phone. A lot of them have actual locations in different cities. Get a support group, get help, do some research. Then have the conversation about, maybe it's time for you to bring in someone to the house that can help with day-to-day tasks, can help you with shopping, can help you take you to doctor's appointments, things like that. Another possibility is maybe you can't afford to have someone come to the house, but maybe they can move in with you. And at that stage, my biggest suggestion is that you get a therapist to give you support and help during the different stages, because realistically speaking, wherever you pick up on where the person is in the stages, the 7 stages, the progression of the disease can take years. So you can see this person declining over the span of 10 years, or it can literally be months. So it's a grueling process, it's a scary process. And you are going to need that support. You're going to need someone that you can talk to, that can give you advice, that can help you. So support groups, therapist, somebody. So you move them in with you. I would say find out as much information as you can on how can you talk to your loved one when they're living with you, asking them to do things. How can you give them choices, how can you maintain their dignity, things like that. Then the last option, of course, is talking about an assisted living. And again, all of these options should be presented early, as early in the stages as possible, so that the person has as much time as possible to adjust to the change before the decline is so severe, that the person is no longer able to adjust to change. So the next phase would be talk about an assisted living. And how do you talk? I have a lot of family members that don't know how to have that conversation, and then they just come up and say, hey, guess what, so now you live here. And they take their loved one, and this is a literal thing, they take their loved ones, they go and do a tour of an assisted living, for example, and then they say, oh, and here's your room. And all of a sudden this person's like, what do you mean, here's my room? And it's like, yeah, you're actually going to be living here now, and we're going to sell your stuff, we're going to sell your house, and you are now here, this is your new house. I think that if a person is on the early stages of dementia, so anywhere between stage 1 to stage 4, that really should not be the way that you go about transitioning the person, because they're still cognizant enough that they value their opinion, they value their independence, they value their dignity. So I think there should be a conversation involved with this. I think that there should be a doctor possibly involved with this, where maybe you have the neurologist, yourself and your loved one have a powwow conversation about safety, about the memory decline, and just kind of help them that way. I think that they should have a part in maybe touring different locations that you think may be financially possible for them to choose from, and have a say of where they stay as much as possible. Now, if it's very late stages, like you did not realize what was happening early enough, or they just refused and you just didn't know what to do, and now it's getting to the point where they're falling on a regular basis and you just have to move them, I think at that point, yeah, you just transferring them to a new location is probably what you have to do. There's just no other option. But if you can catch it early, it would really make a huge difference on the adjustment process. So, okay, other things that are important to talk about early on: finances. There should be a living will. There should be a power of attorney. Discussions on whether the person wants a do not resuscitate or not should be made as soon as you realize that there is cognitive decline. Things move very quickly when a person starts to enter stages 4 and 5. Things can move very quickly. Confusion can set in very, very fast. So it's not like you can say, oh, I can push this off to next month. They can continue to live alone, or they can continue to pay their own bills, and I'll just visit Florida and see them next month and talk about it, or I'll just drop by their house in a few weeks or something like that. It does not work that way. Change happens rapidly. Confusion happens rapidly. So when it comes to transferring finances, you want to try to do that early on, stage 3 or 4, where you can take control before disaster happens. Because my experience working with people that have dementia and the finances have not been handled early on, is the person will have no electricity for weeks, and nobody comes to visit them. Family calls the cell phone, they answer the phone. The person says everything is fine, there's no problem. In the meantime, they have no electricity in the house. Maybe they're eating rotten food, expired food, but they're telling you that they're perfectly fine. And then the guilt sets in, because once you realize, oh my gosh, my parent, my loved one, has literally been living without electricity for 2 or 3 weeks because they couldn't figure out how to pay the bill, or because they couldn't navigate the phone system at the electric company, or because they spent all of their money and don't even remember on what. Maybe they paid the same bill 3 or 4 times, and now they don't have money to pay the other bills. Who knows? Tons of different things can happen. So finances should be discussed early, where maybe a loved one is designated as a power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and their name is added to the bank account of the person who's suffering from dementia, and they can manage the money that way. Or you just completely take the credit cards away, take the debit card away, and then give them like a card that has only a certain amount of money in for their own personal expenses, while you manage everything else as far as finances are concerned. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it, but that should be done early on. The next thing is communication. How do I communicate with my loved one when they have such a hard time following directions? When they have such a hard time believing what I'm telling them, when they have such a hard time making decisions. Keep it simple. Keep it very simple. Keep it very brief. If they have to make a choice on something, even as small as choosing what to eat for dinner at a restaurant, choosing what to wear, take over. Not in a condescending way, but just sort of say, I think I remember you really liking this meal here at this restaurant. You want to try that? And just kind of like cueing the person into picking something, instead of just letting them look at the menu and pick for themselves, because it can get really, really overwhelming. Anything that requires more than 1 or 2 options in any aspect of their lives, and I'm talking from the most broad sense of the word to the most specific sense of the word, any aspect of their life can be very, very overwhelming. So you can make subtle suggestions like, hey, this looks really good, or I think you really liked this meal here, and the person usually will go along with it if they don't feel like you're being condescending or treating them like a child. Another thing is like when it comes to picking clothes, for example, okay, do you want the green shirt or the blue shirt? But not a matter of like, oh, go to your room and, go ahead and get dressed because we have to go. No, you go with them, you present 2 simple options at most. There will come a point, maybe stage 5 and 6, where you're going to have to pick the clothes because they're not even going to understand the concept of getting dressed or why we wear Sunday clothes versus pajamas. So keep it very, very simple. Keep it very, very brief. No more than 2 steps directions. So we're talking about go to the bathroom and brush your teeth, not go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, comb your hair, get dressed, blah, blah, blah. Or worse, go ahead and get ready. Get ready is no longer an option. Get dressed is no longer an option. It's now down to the specifics. Go brush your teeth. What kind of, what shirt do you want? What pants do you want? Go pee before we leave the house, stuff like that. Let's see, what else? Driving. Okay, driving. Driving is a big one. People who are older really, really appreciate their independence. They really want to make sure that they can stay independent for as long as possible. So driving is tough. Having a discussion about safety early on is important. You don't want to necessarily make the person feel stupid. You don't want them to feel like they're not valued, or like they don't have value. I think with the driving, probably, if at all possible, having an aid, and it doesn't have to be like a very expensive, like a CNA. It can be just a home health aid, but just having an aid, offering an aid to drive the person, instead of saying like, oh, I'm gonna take your keys now and stuff like that, and making the person very uncomfortable, may be helpful. I stress as much as possible early intervention, because if you can have the person, your loved one, get to know an aid, a support person, during stages 3, 4, where they're still cognizant, where they're still able to start relationships, where they're still able to grow relationships and make decisions on their own. If you start to build that bond between your loved one and an aid, a support person, early on, then by the time they have to be fully dependent on somebody, they have rapport and they have trust, and you can even get to the point where they'll just be used to having somebody, just having an aid. And it may not always be the same aid, but at least they'll be used to just having help, which is the hardest just hurdle to go over at the beginning, is just helping the person accept that they need help. So early intervention, even if they can still drive, even if they can still manage their finances, but you're noticing that maybe they're skipping meals, maybe they're forgetting words, they're forgetting directions, they're forgetting names, they're starting to have a harder time with conversation, jump right in and just offer the assistance of an aid. Like, Mom, Dad, I think it'd be really great if we bring in somebody to just help you with the groceries a couple times a week, help you with the trash a couple times, once a week, help you with the groceries, help you with the laundry. They're not going to bother you, but it'd be good to have somebody there, since I can't be there all the time. And it'll be somebody that you can play games with, that you can talk to, that you can watch TV with, that can take you to the park, that can take you to have lunch. Present the fun things about it as well as the day-to-day stuff, and just like start working the person into like maybe getting comfortable with it, and from there start introducing the help. And I would say that that's best case scenario, that would be the best thing when it comes to driving. Other options when it comes to driving is you can go with the person to see the primary care physician, and you can have a private conversation with the primary care physician about writing a letter to the DMV. There's a form, I believe there's a form that you can have to the DMV where they can redact the They can either take the license or they can actually have the person pass a test to see if they can still drive. That would be, again, worst case scenario. It's very forced. It's just, it's tough. So, okay, long video about dementia, but I really wanted to go into this, and I'd really love to hear your feedback. If you have questions, if you are experiencing similar things, just leave a comment, a feedback, question, whatever you want, and I'll continue to post. Take care, guys.